So, Stefan,
Hi, Alexander.
I'm very happy that you are here. You're here because your piece Generation Kill will be performed in Gdańsk on Wednesday, day after tomorrow. So you had a rehearsal with our ensemble Orchestra Muzyki Nowej. And I'm very glad that you agreed to have this talk, and also you had presentation about some of your work with our students. I want to start with a question that perhaps will sound strange, but I think it works with you very well. Who do you think you are?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, first of all, I think I am a very different person from who I was a week ago, or 2 weeks ago, or a year ago, or 2 years ago. And I'm definitely going to be a different person in a week or in 1 year. I am many people at the same time. I am many identities at the same time, I think. My family, for example, is very diverse. So I have a part of my family that comes from Lithuania, from Portugal, from London, from the Netherlands. So there are a lot of different influences there that, somehow are part of myself. I grew up in Antwerp, in Belgium, but I also studied abroad. I studied in Barcelona, I studied in Boston. I'm living in Berlin right now for 6 years already. So there are many different influences there that come together. There are many. I studied engineering before I studied music, so those are also different things that come together. I grew up playing the piano. Then I moved more to electronic music once I studied composition, and initially wanted to be a pianist. Then I had this dream of becoming a conductor, and then I started composing, and then it became clear that I wanted to be a composer. But even today, I think while composing, I think I also have these different. There's a very performative part in me that I also find very important in when I compose or when I compose for people. Also, I'm an improviser, so I improvise doing live electronics. And again, like there is different things come together there. The composer part of me, but also the performer part. When I compose, there is a bit of this improvisational side always present too. When I improvise, there is a compositional part present. So I think there are many things coming together there. And then, of course, my identity, or at least the way that my identity communicates outside of myself, is not only through my physical presence, but also through all the avatars that we have. We talked with the students about this just before. My Facebook identity, my YouTube identity, my web presence, those are all different things. I also love making photos, so I also print my own pictures, and it's another side of my identity too.
It's very interesting. It confirms my intuition, because the composition did not come first and it did not come last. So it's kind of in the center, but it seems that you do not necessarily see yourself primarily as a composer, which strikes me as, I guess, very modern or contemporary, maybe, fact about this strange occupation that is composition. That you
Right.
were many different things or many different personalities, also artistically, because that's what I guess somehow meant. If you are painting a much broader picture than I anticipated even, but I was aiming at that. You could be treated either as a video and sound artist or as a engineer with artistic inclination, maybe, and also, of course, as a composer. But it seems like your identity, this concept of identity, is something that is important to you. Yes, but your own identity is very broad and diverse. So.
True. I do think at this point, in my life, I consider myself primarily as a composer. But it's true what you say that there are many things around that are also really important in my in who I am. One thing that also became more important in the last years, which is circling this thing of being a composer or being an artist, is teaching. That's also something that is an important part of who I am and what I love and what I find important.
So what do you teach?
I teach at the Musikhochschule in Dresden. I teach composition and I'm the director of the hybrid music lab there. So we work with the students, we work a lot around using media, new media, also older media when composing. But for example, I also started a electroacoustic improvisation band at the Hochschule, where we also approach music making through that angle, and where a lot of composers are also playing computer or digital instruments or with effects, and where also performers from the jazz department take part. And so I think it's a brilliant question you asked there, because also there I want to create a situation which is kind of multifaceted, where it's not just composers composing, but also composers performing, but also working with jazz musicians or with because I really believe in that, and I also believe in collaborations, for example. And I think it's also really important in today's world that we collaborate and not just sit on our little islands, because otherwise, also on a macro scale, you see what's happening to the world when people just only think of themselves.
Yeah. So, out of curiosity, how is it structured academically? Because you said you teach composition, but obviously you do a lot of other things as well as being the teacher there. So do you have a class or do you...
Yeah. One of the things that I really like about the Hochschule in Dresden, one of the reasons also why I wanted to apply and work there, is that all the students can choose every semester 2 out of 3 composition teachers. So at this point we have Marc-André, Manos Tsangaris and me teaching composition there. And every semester students can choose 2 of them. And I think that's really great in many ways, because students can get different opinions from different people, sometimes these opinions are really contradictory. So you kind of have to develop your own vision and pick what you think is important for you. But what is also really nice, I think, is that really creates the feeling of a group. It's not like this is my student and that is your student, but it's really like, okay, we share these people and we're like a family. We're trying to we're trying to help these people go forwards together.
Is there would you be able to to describe some kind of aesthetic, or you could call it differently, but trend that is present there in Dresden Hochschule, or is it very diverse?
I think it's quite diverse, and I also personally try to I mean, you teach too, you know how difficult it is to shut out your own ego or try to just be a channel for your students to develop themselves, and that's really what I try. I don't try to push them into a direction. I guess we all somehow unconsciously do in any case a little bit, but I'm trying to be really conscious about that. So actually we have students that are very diverse, and what I find the most important thing is that we can just make them I want them to have some kind of a very free way of thinking. So be able to take risks, to dream, and to think, okay, this is really weird, but I'm going to try it. Rather than let's stay on the safe roads. No, I would really, when that happens, I really recommend the student to try it out. If it fails, it's fine, but that's and well, of course, people apply also to the Hochschule because perhaps someone is more interested in music theater, and Manos Tangaris has such a huge background in that he's really an interesting person to study with if you're more interested in music theater. If you're more interested in chamber music or instrumental contemporary music, Marc-André has such a huge experience in that field. And I guess people perhaps come a bit more to me if they're interested in multidisciplinary things or work with new media. But on the other hand, we all do many different things. Like Marc-André also uses electronics. I just wrote a piece for electric guitar and orchestra, so I also do orchestral or instrumental music, and Manos as well. So, yeah.
I see. So coming back to your music, I'm curious how you think about the concept of material. What's the material that you work on primarily?
Yeah, that's a vast question. It really depends on. Well, for a part, it depends on the pieces I think I work with or work on. We had a bit of a discussion or a conversation about this earlier with your students as well before. I am very much inclined personally to work with, or I love all kinds of noisy sounds. Somehow my ear or my taste is inclined towards that world rather than a world consisting of pitches. Of course, I use both, but like I think there is a gravitation towards material that uses or that focuses more on timbre rather than harmony. I have no idea why that is, but yeah, that's just something that I feel inside me. Nevertheless, I start to somehow for myself rediscover harmony now. So yeah, I think my material is a bit is evolving also over time. But then at the same time, I love electronic sounds. I love when I improvise, for example, I have this digital instrument that I built myself, which I play with toy around with a lot. And then I use samples. I could also use samples of. I have this one piece, Fremdkörper 3, with Michael Jackson, where I use Michael Jackson samples. And I have other pieces where I also use very recognizable samples, which I then process or work with.
And what about the video part? Because it's also, or it seems at least, to be your one of your favorite types of material. Do you consider it meaningful in a somewhat straightforward way? I mean, do you use image as something that means what it looks like, or do you use it as a abstract?
Um, I think I like to play with both. So, for example, in a piece, I couldn't show it today to the students because we didn't have the time, but there is a composition called Mirror Box Extensions, which makes use of video and also tablets. And there is even a part of that piece which is called "What You See Is Not What You Get." Well, with the not in between brackets. So for me, video very much is this play with, okay, what you see is what you get, but perhaps it's also not what you get. And I find that really fascinating. Also because the world in which we live is so hybrid and more hybrid. And it becomes more and more difficult to see the difference between virtual or real. It becomes this mash. There are already these videos of Barack Obama saying things that he never said, but it's this artificial intelligence engine that creates his image and makes his lips move and use words that he never said. So I find that really interesting and scary also, how what you see is less and less what you get.
Or
or
maybe that's exactly what you get, which is
right,
confusion.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, but well, I'm asking this because it seems to me, knowing some of your pieces only, but these most, I guess, famous, like Generation Kill or Piano Hero, it seems to me that you work with at least also with the gestures in the image that produce certain kind of predictability, which you then destroy. You use situations in which the sound and image are connected to each other in a, you would think, predictable way, but then glitches happen.
Right.
At first you might think that maybe it's an error of the performance or the material, but then you realize that it's not error. That you intentionally play with pianists, for example, hitting the keys exactly in opposite moment that you'd expect. So I'm wondering if in your mind there is some relation to, let's say, tradition of expectation and fulfillment, or leading in a different direction that I think music has always used.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a very important. It's something that I think about a lot when I compose, setting up a specific system and then disrupting it. And yeah, for me, composing is very much playing with that balance, with expectations and breaking expectations, creating. Yeah, what I find interesting about that is that the moments that you break those expectations are moments of perspective shifts. And those moments are the moments that somehow you take with you also afterwards. Because you suddenly have to become active again as a listener, or when something like that happens, because you have to recontextualize what just happened. And so that's something that I find really fascinating, and it's very useful also to create or to consciously work with that.
So there was one fascinating question today, very good, I think, from one of the students, about the content, about the amount, let's say, of critique in your work. I think it's very good question, because you somehow stem from the tradition of let's say Lahenman, but I mean it more broadly than just his music. But
Sure.
for sure, his person is well, his person, his music, and his artistic credo, let's say, is strongly associated with social critique and treating music as a long, many centuries tradition of kicking off balance
Right.
to the bourgeois, let's say, or well, different groups, but for sure this aspect is important, and so Lahanman's material that you also quoted here, these timbral realms more than harmonic. Well, it used to be this kind of tool to make this shift in perspective and I guess to throw off balance somewhat the listener. But what I'm asking is how much of this thinking of this of the critique of today's world is present in your thinking, but also in your pieces, because you can ask this question, and it's a very valid question.
Yeah, absolutely. The pieces I show today, and in 90 minutes you can only show so much. Those pieces are probably my most political pieces I wrote. Definitely Generation Kill is. And perhaps that's also why I showed them, because they trigger more interesting conversations that can go broader. But not all my music has a very, or is as concrete politically as Generation Kill, for example. On the other hand, I think most of my work starts from a questioning and a questioning outside of music. For example, I'm even the Undercurrent, the guitar concerto, electric guitar concerto that was just premiered last week. It's a piece without video. It's a piece without overt political meaning, but for me, it was really meaningful to have this instrument, the electric guitar, which only operates with current, with electricity, and then have an orchestra, this archetype of romantic music, sitting behind him and treating this orchestra as a human amplifier of the guitar. So the underlying idea I had there was like, okay, how can you have a guitar, and actually in this specific situation with Jaron Deutsch as the electric guitar player, he has a very idiosyncratic setup with two guitar amplifiers. Each amplifier is one amplifier is connected to the pickups of the guitar, the other one is connected to a special pickup microphone that is on the neck, which amplifies the acoustic sound of the strings. So you have these two amplifiers amplifying sounds in a different way. So I play with that a lot. And then I wanted to have the orchestra as a human amplifier. And I thought that was interesting because you create a tension between the technological and the human there. And so it's not overtly political, but it is for me a questioning about the human position in a technologized world. And then also the question of, okay, what is an orchestra today? Is it just like an amplifier? Is it this one thing? So in that sense, most of my pieces actually start with this questioning, and it's also questioning towards myself, like, okay, what can I do with that? Because there is also, for a big part, kind of an innocent, boyish parts of myself where I love to play with things. I love to put things together, see what I can do with it. Based, on this conceptual layer.
Interesting. Do you think how much of your boyish, as you said, playfulness goes in the direction of science fiction, I wonder. Well, because, for example, in Generation Kill, there are, to me, clearly fragments in which you play with idea of the tension between what's humanly possible and humanly impossible. In the image of these like mixed image of the musicians, in which you see the live musician and also you see the hologram, let's say,
Right.
of a recorded musician, and the recorded ones sometimes play in humanly impossible speed, for example.
Right.
Well, they are controlled as by the game controllers. I guess this component is also present here. That they are just controlled in that way. But yeah. So coming back to the question, do you think about the future in these terms of robotic or semi-robotic creatures that are inevitable to come?
Sure. Today I was even wondering at some point while showing Piano Hero, I suddenly was wondering in 100 years if, for example, a pianist could also be a robot, but a robot looking like a humanoid, let's say. You probably also have seen these videos of these robots by Boston Dynamics, like the dogs and they are so scary because they look so much like the real, or they have so much.
You can relate to them.
You can totally relate to them, and they look like really living animals. So anyway, I was wondering, okay, what if in 100 years the pianist for Piano Hero would be a humanoid? What would change how would that change this piece? Because the piece is about this confrontation between the human and his avatar. So yeah, that could be interesting. So yes, I definitely think about that. I guess the thinking about that comes from my fascination about the contemporary technology as well. So having a look on what specific technologies do today kind of inevitably brings you or you project into the future. I'm, for example, going to work on a big project soon for the Nadar Ensemble, where I also want to work with augmented reality and develop this idea of hybrid space even further and create situations where you really have dialogues between physical present musicians and holograms or avatars or augmented reality situations.
By the way, you described quite specifically what you mean by hybrid body, but could you explain a little bit more about this hybrid space concept?
Yes, absolutely. They're very much connected, of course, but when I say hybrid space, I mean spaces where it's more and more difficult to say what, or where it's actually not even important anymore to say what is real and what is virtual, but it really overlaps. So for example, I think Pokemon Go is an excellent example of what hybrid spaces are and can be, where you have this overlay of a physical space and people really believe in it. There are even people who jump accidentally off bridges because they think they can get a Pokemon there. So it's definitely as real reality gets. There is this project by Microsoft, HoloLens. I don't know if you've heard about it. I think they're developing HoloLens 2 now. It's still not something that is being put on the consumer market, but they're developing it. And it is special goggles with special photonic glasses. And it has this some kind of next step of the Kinect camera in it. And what it does is, so the Kinect camera scans your surroundings constantly, and it creates a virtual, a 3D map of it. And then inside the glasses of these goggles, you have a projection of, I don't know, if you want to watch a football game while you're eating, you can actually project it on that wall, and it's as if it's there, but it's actually just in your glasses. And it doesn't take so much fantasy to imagine where this can go. It's
I think Facebook just recently announced the new concept of redesigning the whole company and renaming it Metaverse or something.
oh yeah, right.
Yes, it's and of course, Elon Musk and his ideas of actually putting chips in the skull quite soon. I
Right.
think it's realistic. So
Yeah.
it's coming. Do you think? Are you more excited or scared?
Oof. Really both. Perhaps, no, I don't know, really both. I'm really scared about that too, but it's also quite exciting. Imagine having a chip that makes it possible that you could speak in Polish to me and I could understand immediately what you're saying through some kind of translation tool. We wouldn't have to. What would that do to a world? Everyone can talk to anyone. We don't have to learn languages anymore. I don't know. Perhaps that's also horrible. Learning languages also does something to your brain in general. But yeah, I don't know. I'm fascinated. Let's say I have both scares and excitement about that.
Right.
And I think that's also very often what my music, unconsciously probably, what is in my music, both this fascination for technology, but also some kind of, not really knowing.
It does seem ominous sometimes.
Right,
in
right.
Pieces, for sure. This the expression of the pianist in Piano Hero is. Do you how much of it is your instruction of what his facial expression is?
In Piano Hero 1, there is no instructions about his facial expression or her. In Piano Hero 4, there is all his gestures actually. So the way that piece works is that all the video material is pre-recorded, and the pianist has to mimic this video material as good as possible so that you don't really understand that it's pre-recorded, which means that every gesture he or she makes while recording it has to be replicated in the rehearsal process. And that's also really interesting for the performer, because it's been recorded twice by different, so by Rei Nakamura and Stefan Ginsberg, and now Marta Finkelstein is doing one as well. But it's always very confrontational when you see yourself perform and you didn't realize that perhaps this is how you play, but you only start to realize once you have to mimic this. Anyway, so yeah, in Piano Hero 4, the gestures are very much described or prescribed, but the facial expression not actually. So the performer can do whatever.
I mean, it seems like it's striking that in the context, at least, of the whole piece, of the sounds and of the image, you could read it as confusion, but also a kind of inhumanness, maybe.
Right. Yeah, I think that's the interpretational choice that you make as a performer. In Piano Hero 1, for example, I've had very, very different approaches to playing that piece, which is kind of interesting, because I was once asked by Barbara Maurer, the former viola player of Ensemble Recherche, an incredible musician. The first time she saw Piano Hero, she asked me afterwards, But where is the freedom of the performer? Because you can't really sculpt sound the way you sculpt it on a grand piano. Let's say you just press a key.
Yeah.
But because you just press a key, and because you have to compete with this video image, actually the way you perform becomes even more important, because it pushes you to take a stance, to decide, how do I relate to this video? How will I be the robot performer? Will I be an extra human performer, which is then pushing the avatar more away from me? Do I want to create some kind of am I an operator? Am I a facilitator? And yeah, I've seen very, very different approaches and responses to that from performers. Sometimes people become more theatrical because of that. Sometimes people become less.
Mm-hmm.
And in that sense, actually, the human part, kind of contradictory, it becomes even more, or the performative part becomes even more conscious and more important than, let's say, when you play Brahms. Or, of course, the human part relies then on other things, but this performative aspect comes more to the foreground.
Yeah. It's very interesting. It grasps something about the reality nowadays, I think. This tension between the idea of actually being a puppet, sort of.
Right.
And also having to struggle against some kind of reality that is out of your grasp, but at the same time having to be there, because you always have live component, I guess. Do you ever write just electronic music?
I have a few pieces which are fixed media, but very often these pieces then become part of another piece that integrates it, and in which there is live performance. I was just thinking, when you were talking about the performer or the human as a puppet, in the Piano Hero cycle, which consists of 4 pieces, I implicitly developed kind of a narrative of the performer becoming more and more a puppet. Because in Piano Hero 1, for example, the performer is completely in control, let's say, of all the sounds that you see and hear. In Piano Hero 2, the control is being pushed to its limits, because the performer has to do a lot. He has to play 2 keyboards. There are 4 video cameras. It's really like a pilot controlling a rocket. He has 2 extra pedals too, so there's a lot to. It's really a choreography, and it's kind of on the border of what is possible. Then in Piano Hero 3, there is no video, but there's only sound, but there is a feedback system through the piano. There is no more. He doesn't, or she doesn't use the keyboard anymore. They're just a grand piano. But there is kind of a feedback system which is a chaotic system, so it's not entirely possible to control it anymore. The piano, it almost has a life. Well, it actually does have a life of itself once you turn on the computer, which controls the feedback a little bit. It could run by itself, and then the pianist has to find ways to come into symbiosis with it. So there is, at that point, the pianist doesn't have the control anymore of the system. It really is this symbiotic relationship. And then in Piano Hero 4, the pianist is literally just a puppet, because it's just it's karaoke. He's just doing what the score tells the performer to do, but it's pretty much playbacking on the video.
It makes me think, I guess one of the strongest tensions or dynamic, let's say, motors of development of some ideas in the 20th century, and still, I think, has been tension between control and chance. what do you think about that in the context of your music?
Yeah, I find that a very interesting. I find those very interesting elements, and very often, I mean, they're quite important in my work. In earlier pieces, I tried to find ways, for example, to integrate improvisation within compositional structures. Of course, improvisation is not just lack of control. On the contrary, real good improvisers are in total control of it. But it is lack of control from the composer. So I remember when I wrote a piece, Ventriloquium, it's called, in 2007. I really struggled as a composer with giving away the control I have as a composer to a performer. I was also really fascinated by that, and I wanted that. But I remember it was really difficult for me to, just give that control away and give it to a performer. And there are other pieces where I try to create a system of, where the composer has only part of the control and then performers have another. For example, in Infiltrationen. But in many of my recent pieces, or more recent pieces, I try to work with sounds that you cannot fully control as a performer. Sounds that are by nature unstable, and you have to accept the fact that you cannot fully control it. I've had collaborations with incredible performers who really got nervous and kind of unhappy about the fact that those sounds were, by definition, not really controllable.
So like, what do you mean? What kind of sounds?
For example, a bass clarinet with a plastic foil, or a thick piece of plastic on the bell. And if you play your low C, then it makes beautiful vibrations. But it's really difficult to control how that happens. And sometimes it works better, sometimes it works less. For example, or even also now in Undercurrents, this orchestral piece or guitar concerto, all the strings play with aluminum foil over their strings and the bridge.
Always?
And almost 2/3 of the piece. And part of it also is because that creates a sound world that is, of course, partly because I wanted to take a step away from this traditional romantic orchestral sound, but also because there you create this texture that you cannot really control, and I think that creates a really interesting sound world and something that personally attracts me. That's also what I find really interesting about improvising. You share control with the other performer. You react on what happens, I just find that quite fascinating.
Mm-hmm. So, jumping maybe, well, it's related, but it's a bit of another subject. What would be your favorite sources of inspiration as far as composers nowadays?
I actually am very much inspired by improvisers. A lot of they're really incredible improvisers that.
But instrumental or media improvisers, or both?
Both. But I don't know. For example, someone I to today inspires me a lot is Evan Parker, the saxophone improviser, or Peter Evans, the trumpet improviser. There are many people. Also, a good friend of mine, for example, Matthias Kohle, an electric guitar improviser, who has inspired me a lot in the past also when writing. Actually, I once composed a piece for electric guitar and electronics for him, but I was also inspired by his playing and improvising. So that's definitely something that inspires me a lot. But also what my colleagues do, sometimes not even necessarily music that I mean, sometimes I'm also inspired by things that don't work, that I think are not really successful, but then somehow trigger something. I'm also very much inspired by dance, for example. A choreographer that I find extremely fascinating and interesting, and I've worked with him on a big project called Third Space, is Daniel Linehan. He's an American dancer based in Brussels already for a long time. Dancer and choreographer, and yeah, his work, for example, also has inspired me a lot as a composer. Or theater, for example. Or, yeah.
Do you ever write music with text, by the way?
That's my black hole, let's say. No, so far I have never used the voice. I'm going to do a project soon with voice, but it's been something I wasn't able so far to wrap my head around and find a way to do it.
Well, it's interesting to me because well, this is what I like a lot, but also I know that people in Belgium naturally speak many languages, at least 3, I guess, or maybe you probably more, right? So from what you said, I would guess that maybe even more than the typical Belgium set of languages.
Sure.
Belgian, but so and what's interesting to me is how music comes out of language, and also how language forms or shapes your understanding of the world. Because I think
Right.
you really are a different person in different language. I feel
agree,
I
totally.
have a very different personality in English than in Polish. So this is also relating to what you said about identity, about your identity, but also your idea for identity in music. So I guess I was wondering if your multilingual personality needs musical expression of these different understandings of the world through different languages.
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess so, but really working with voice so far, yeah, I didn't manage to. And I think partly because it's so concrete, a voice, and yeah, voice almost immediately brings you to text, not necessarily, of course, but and then once you have text, things are so concrete, and so far that's been something that I yeah, that was too concrete for me. I like the abstractness of music, which perhaps sounds a bit contradictory when you think of pieces that have also a political layer that perhaps are a bit more present, like Generation Kill, for example. But yeah, still, I don't know. I love sounds, and I love the abstractness of it, and somehow I'm scared of sound being a vehicle for a story, for example, or I want the sound itself to be the story.
Very interesting.
So
That was my other question. What do you think about the narrative quality of music?
yeah,
Because I think it's a big question today, because the narration has been, or maybe already had been important, and but I think it's so important in general humans' experience of the world. You tell well, we tell stories, so it's very. I sometimes wonder if you could argue that music is a little bit alienated, or sound art from the general society. It's a niche. Well, maybe not in Berlin where we live now, but I guess here you could say so. And I wonder if that's partly because the narration and the music went separate ways. But coming back to this sound and voice, what came to my mind was Georges Apergis, who's well, I would say that his music, it's a very different music than yours, but it seems to me somewhat similar in the idea of control of a human performer as a puppet, and of course
Yeah.
of the abstract quality of the sound produced by mouth.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a lot of admiration for Georges' music, especially how he deals with voice. And yeah, it's interesting with him because the performers somehow, like you mentioned, they're dehumanized almost, but at the same time they become extremely human as well because it's always playful as well.
Yeah.
It's always a homo ludens. There's also this the kid playing with the voice, and even the instrumental music by Apergis is actually vocal music. It's just transcription of vocal music always, or at least almost always, I guess. Another composer I really admire for his use of voice is Peter Ablinger.
Mm-hmm.
For me, for example, the pieces, voices for piano and loudspeaker are really, it's so smart and so interesting, and it really helps you look and listen differently to a voice. And it's actually, it's not political at all. It's very much based, I mean, in a way, yes, and in a way perhaps you can say every music is political.
The choice of people is
For sure.
Is a message there.
Absolutely, that's true. And of course, when you hear the player piano play the universal rights of universal human rights, it's very political. That's absolutely true.
But I guess I know what you mean, because very strangely, when you listen to these pieces, you do not listen to the text. I mean, the text is there, but you actually appreciate it. It's a very freeing experience as a listener. To have such explicit text, you hear it very clearly. Well, not always, but often, and still you just you hear the music in it. Very strange.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the voice also, because of this combination with this mechanical instrument, somehow becomes a bit more like a robotic thing or an alienated mechanic thing. But at the same time, it's the most human expression possible. Yeah, I find that really interesting.
Mm. So you're up to something with text in the near future, or not yet?
With voice, with text, I don't know yet. I'm not sure yet how to deal with it. I have some ideas, and it might have to do with different, all these different identities we have. So in that sense, text could become part of it. But then when I have to think, okay, where do I get my texts? Which texts? How do I generate text if I want to make text? I'm not entirely sure yet. But it's quite outside of my comfort zone, and I'm really curious to see what that will do, where it will bring me.
I see. You're staying in Berlin for much longer?
Yeah, I live in Berlin for the time permanently.
I see.
Let's see what life does. But I love that city, and I moved there because I love the city. And yeah, I'm not planning to move for now.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I wish you all the best for Gdańsk performance.
Thanks so much. It was a pleasure meeting you, and thanks for the excellent questions.
Thank you, and I hope we'll meet again.
I'm sure we will. Yeah,
Goodbye.
great. Those were really good questions.
Thanks.
Yeah.